So, like you said, I'm Sergeant Witcher of South Florida Police. I am part of our accident reconstructions team. Actually, I'm the sole member right now because one of our guys, he moved on to be a chief at different departments. A little background on me, I'm a graduate from LTRIC in 2008. I got hired by South Whitehall in 2012, and I was promoted to sergeant in 2017. If you guys don't know, there's patrolmen, then there's sergeants, and then there's lieutenants, captain, chief. That's the ranking order. So beneath me, I have a few patrolmen, which are working the road right now. In 2000, so probably 2013 was when I took my first course. It was a week-long course. It was like the fundamentals of on-scene accidents. From there, I built on that, where I went to advanced traffic collision. That was a 2-week course. And then the same year, I went to traffic crash reconstruction, which was another 2-week course. Once you get those bases, you're kind of a reconstructionist. You can, I'll pass out some of the formulas and what we worked in class. If you can just pass these around. Now, the teacher showed me the formulas that you guys are working. It would probably take me about a week to do those right now because it's been 5 years since I did them. But I was in your shoes where we were working those every day for about 8 hours a day. So from there, I moved on and I got qualified in front of Judge Steinberg at Lehigh County Courthouse, where he testified in front of him, and he pretty much kind of says you're an expert kind of thing. 2018, pedestrian collision investigation, interviewing, because we have to interview people, because sometimes people survive these accidents, and so potentially they could be suspects. First thing, there's 2 types of accidents: reportable and non-reportable. A non-reportable is there's no injuries, no towing. You back into something. 2 cars collide, both can leave, no one's injured. Non-reportable. Reportable, more serious, there's towing required and people are hurt. And unfortunately, sometimes fatals happen, and then serious bodily injury is when I would get called to. The AA 500 or AA 600 right there, that's the PennDOT form where all of our officers complete them. This is part of the form. This is only a small portion. Reportable crash, you fill out all this information as well. If you change it to non-reportable, a lot of this stuff grays out. See how this is already grayed out? Grays out, so you don't have to complete that. So when it's a reportable injury towed, it's a little more in depth. So we'll get to the videos. This right here is in front of Dorney Park. I believe it was 2016. I think it's 2016 or 2017. A Jeep collides with a Toyota Camry. We're not always lucky enough to get video, but this was one of the circumstances where we got video. So what we concluded was, let me go back. The Jeep lost control. Does anybody know where this is? For an ice cream roll on Hamilton? You know how there's that bend? If you're coming from Allentown, coming around, there's usually a puddle in the road if it's raining out. This is 7 o'clock in the morning. I think it was a 19-year-old female. She was driving a Jeep. She lost control around the turn, is what she was saying, and ultimately jumped the median and collided with a Toyota Camry, who ultimately she passed away about a year later. So we really did not have much road evidence of this because the roadway was wet, so there was no braking. There was scuff marks, tire marks on the road, but nothing to indicate that we could do any formulas or anything to figure out. So we had the video. So what we tried to do is try to get speed from the video. So we used the velocity formula, distance divided by time, give it velocity. So what I did was I used the VLC program, went into the codecs of it, and determined the frame rate of the video. It was roughly 15 frames per second. So divide that by 1 second, you get 0.06 second per frame. I used the reference points of the tree. Use that reference points. You guys see that tree right? You guys see this tree right here? I use that reference point, and I use the end of this post here. I stood here where this camera was positioned there, and I had an officer go out into the 2 lanes there because we didn't know which lane she was in as she was traveling. I had her go out in the 2 lanes there and had them put a marker there with spray paint. The 2 distance that we got were right there, 23 feet and 31.9 feet. Using the formulas there, we determined that frame rate, what we're doing here, velocity was 59.59, and for the left lane was 80.55. Now we have to convert that to speed because of velocity. So she was doing 40 to 54 miles an hour. Speed limit there is 45. We had nothing else to go on. She wasn't on her phone. She didn't have anything in her system. Ultimately, she was not charged with anything. It was just, she lost control of her vehicle. Sometimes accidents are unfortunately accidents. I will show you the Toyota. They had airbags in it. And some of the newer models, I think starting in like 2010, were able to download those. So this is her going towards downtown, 5 seconds, 3 seconds. So she's doing 44, 46. So she's getting a little bit because it's going downhill there, 47. You see when you get roughly around here, 0.35 seconds, she lets off on the gas, percentage right there, and she tries to make the turning movements, steering input. So she didn't even see this coming until it was at her driver's door, unfortunately. And like I said, she did pass away about a year later. You guys have any questions about that? Yes?
So whose steps is this?
So this is actually Bosch. Because airbag control models, most new vehicles have them now. So we can plug into them. I'll get to that later, but we have officers that can plug into them and download it as long as that unit, which is usually in the middle of a vehicle, isn't destroyed. So this is what it is printout. This is just a small portion of it. Usually it's about 50 pages. Yes?
So when the accident happens, do you guys just go right there and do all of this and follow?
So yeah, I was off when this accident occurred. They called me and another officer, and we came out because we're part of the recon team, is what we're called. Any other questions? So I'll get to the basis of it, who responds to the accidents. The police, EMS, fire, and fire police. The secondary responders would be the crash team, which I'll get into the Lehigh County crash team. It's something we formed about 2-3 years ago. District Attorney's Office, we have a chief deputy district attorney, Paul Bernardino. He comes out to all of our accidents. He's the one that prosecutes most of our accidents. We also have PennDOT come out because sometimes we have to shut down the road for an extended period of time. Public Works, same thing. We've used drones as well just to get an aerial view of the accidents. And then sometimes we drop it down and then kind of fly it in as if you're in the car coming to the accident scene. And then ultimately the tow companies come and tow the vehicles. So the crash team, which I'm a member of, we got Upper Macungie, Upper Saucon, Whitehall, Emmaus, Salisbury, Emmaus, and then the Lehigh County District Attorney's Office. In Upper Mac, Lieutenant Reeder, he's in charge of it. And then the assistant coordinator is Sergeant Driscoll with Upper Saucon. So this is another accident we had here. I think around the same time, 2016. It wasn't a good year for Hamilton Boulevard. Does anybody know where this is? Okay. There used to be signage. Used to be pretty much no signage right here telling people they can't turn. So ultimately we would have, I don't know, during park season, we have about 100 vehicles that return there within like an hour. So, another video. This is one of our officers just driving along. So on the motorcycle, there was a male operator and a female passenger. The male operator died at the hospital, and the female passenger, she has severe injuries, which she's still suffering from now. The driver of the minivan was charged. The reason she was charged was because she was turning left where there's ample amount of signage telling her not to. This is part of something where we and the district attorney's office kind of come together to determine whether or not charges should be filed or not. If we file charges for homicide by vehicle, aggravated assault by vehicle, we need to meet to the point where it's reckless driving, where there's gross negligence. So what she was doing was gross negligent because she should have known you can't turn here. Traffic lights were changing at this time. I don't know if you could see it there. I'll back it up again. The traffic light was changing. So she was waiting there for traffic to clear. Traffic light changed. She had the red, but then the motorcycle was also going through the red light as well. But at the same point, he had the right of way, so she turned into him. I did not work this. I responded to the scene here, but I don't know if the officer did a speed analysis of the braking because he saw a little braking there that they had. But this would be an example where there was a good brake mark there where we could have had some speed analysis of. Any questions on this one? Yes.
Women go to jail or like have fines to pay?
Yes, she did. I don't know if she actually did go to, I think she only got probation. Off the top of my head, I don't know exactly. But most of these cases are worked out where at minimum they'll do, or at maximum they'll do like 2 years. Unless there's something else going on, unless they're like DUI or something like that. It just adds in, there's tiers for the district attorneys and the court systems that they use. So the checklist for when I get on scene, I speak with everybody else that's there, find out what's going on because they've been there for an hour or so. So I need to figure out what's going on. Do a little field sketch, 8x11 piece of paper, kind of mark where stuff is, and then start photographing the scene. Usually with our department, I'll have one of our detectives come out, and he pretty much knows what I like, what I want in these photographs. So, and anything that I need or I see there while there, I just tell him, hey, snap a photo of this. The total station, which is this guy, it's a plotter, essentially. It's connected to a satellite, and pretty much I could walk around with this and mark any piece of evidence that I want to. Lines in the roadway, vehicles, tires, anything. This little small unit, I can operate by myself. It's a great piece of unit for us to have. The old one we had was essentially a unit double the size of this, and then there was someone that walked around with the pole, which they're called the pole, can't really say, pole B. Just use your imagination. Okay. The other piece of equipment that we have is, or actually we don't have, but Whitehall Township has, it's called the Pharaoh. It's essentially the same thing on tripod, but it spins around and captures a 3D image of the scene. For that, you're probably working a scene maybe 3 hours just for it to spin around because it takes about 15 minutes for it to capture one scene or one image. And it only gets about 50 feet. So you can imagine action scenes that can be kind of expansive. So, whereas with this one, I can probably bang out in an hour, hour and a half, depending on how extensive the scene is. So searches and the initial statements, get the initial statements of people that are on scene there. I try not to dive into, when I'm working these scenes, talking to the operators in an extensive amount because I want to have like more evidence as we go, because part of that are cell phones. Everybody has a cell phone. I'm sure you guys have cell phones. And you're on 24/7. So are adults. So we kind of like to get everything before we come in for a formal interview. So small little thing here, well, it gets not really small, but just touch on the roadway evidence. We got tire marks, not brake marks, but just tire marks, like scuffs. We got scratches from when there's contact damage of parts impacting the road, kind of like gouges. The vehicle debris, the fluids. Fluids are a good one because usually if there's like a head-on collision with the fluids, the radiator is right in the front. So what happens when a vehicle crashes with the radiator right there, all that fluid drops right down. So that's usually a good gauge on where the accident impact occurred. We got scuff marks, the fabric transfer from pedestrians does happen, and the biological matter, unfortunately. So this is the Jeep here. This is where she went up over the median, struck the Toyota, and then she did like a 360, and then she actually went flying out the back window. Her seatbelt was on, but somehow she slipped through it and it came out. She came out. Any questions? Yes?
Just for like accidents that happen where, like you said, you don't get them all on video and tire marks and everything. Like, how do you calculate the speed?
So it's very difficult. It's usually we can, because I'd like to say it needs to be a perfect scenario where we have tire marks that lead right up to the vehicle and there's nothing else after that, or right up to the collision, but that's not all the case. But at least we'll get a minimum speed, but that minimum speed, when we talk with the district attorney, he'll say, I need more, I need more. And then when he says he wants crush damage, you guys know what crush damage is? It's where you calculate, I only did it once during training, but it's where you calculate the amount of crush damage on a vehicle and you can convert that back to the energy that was used to do that. I haven't done it in like 5 years, and I only know like 1 or 2 other people that have. But when he says he wants that, we're always like, oh boy. But sometimes that's all he has, so that's what he wants.
So say you need to like go like get the evidence of like just use the motorcycle and the minivan for example. Like how do you like pull out like people have to like get around with that like how
The accident?
Yeah, like shut that down.
Oh yeah. So usually these scenes, they're probably shut down for like 5-6 hours.
Just to like make sure all the evidence. Like,
Yep. Yeah, we shut everything down. Usually if I'm called out there, the roadway's shut down, no one's getting through. Because we have to preserve it. But unfortunately, like with this Jeep accident, people had already drove through there. And there were phones that I found out later that were in the middle of the road, or that were on the median that were actually in the middle of the road that just people picked up, and they think they're helping, you know, anybody would, you know, clear the road when there's vehicles in the roadway, but sometimes we like to see it. We like to see how it was. Any questions? So the gouge marks, like I was talking about, the scratch marks over there. So we got the biological matter, the pedestrians, shoes. Weird fact, usually when a pedestrian is hit, their shoes will, they'll come out of their shoes and their shoes will be in the area of exactly where they were hit. That's a good gauge for us. It's not, we don't calculate any speeds or anything with that, but it's a good starting point. So the vehicle evidence, we got the contact damage, the induced damage. It's when there's, I'll show you a video of when there's like a head-on, but then the hood gets crunkled or like the rooftop gets crunkled because of the amount of force that was on the front end. We got the mechanical components. We got the electrical components, the light bulbs. With the old incandescent light bulbs, they have the filament inside of them. If they're on and there's a force, you'll see the filaments actually bend. Whereas if they're off and they're cold, they'll break. So it's a good indication, if we don't have anything else, to determine if the lights are on or off. Why is that important? Someone says their lights are on, someone says they're off. they should be able to see them. So it all comes back to kind of a he said, she said thing. We have to determine who's right and who's wrong, or who's telling the truth and not. So the event data recorder, that goes back to the airbag control module. That's what I was talking about, where we plug into, try to get the data. Then also we can look at the seatbelts. When we wear a seatbelt and there's that force that's put on the seatbelt, we can see if there's striations or if there's a stretching in the seatbelt. And then also the seat positions, because sometimes people get in accidents and they say their passenger was driving, or vice versa. So if the seat position's up close, but it's 6 foot, supposedly a 6 foot driver, not quite adding up. So the heavy contact damage, obviously, I personally did not work these accidents. These are old ones. So this is the induced damage. Got struck up there, but then you see how everything's just shifted. And the same thing, struck here, bent up. That's induced. So the vehicle components, with the windshields, we can tell if the damage is from the inside or outside on how the glass breaks. You can feel it on the inside if it's broken from the inside or if it's broken from the outside. And it's good at determining if they hit a pedestrian, if it's the pedestrian that's actually hitting the windshield, or it's something from inside the vehicle. So the follow-ups, so usually these cases for Lehigh County, to where we determine if charges are filed or not, roughly 3 to 6 months, sometimes a year, depending on how search warrants and everything go. Right now I'm working on one where Facebook and Instagram, we're going back and forth with search warrants with them. And it's just time consuming because it's not like we get a search warrant and then they give us the results right then. We have to go through the legal process. The medical records, because sometimes we can't get blood taken to the jail, so we have to get medical records. The data on the phone, like I was talking about, the visibility studies is something we've done where a pedestrian was struck on Mauchunk. And we wanted to determine if the driver would have been able to see this person. It was dark time, it was around 9 o'clock at night, if the driver would have been able to see this person or not. It was a hit and run driver, actually. So what we did was put one of our officers in similar clothes, had him stand in the middle of the road, and had another officer with a similar SUV type vehicle drive towards him and then slam on the brakes and stop when they saw him. So there was enough time for them to stop. So she was ultimately charged then. So the crush damage, like to talk about, and then the speed calculations, and then the interviews. There's times when we interview people 3, 4, 5 times, and sometimes their stories always seem to shift, because as we're doing this, we're also getting data back from the cell phones, from medical records, where are pointing to other conclusions. Any questions on that? Yeah.
So do you do all this? You do all this to like charge them?
Yeah. So pretty much we're working at. In my mindset, I'm working at. Am I charging them or am I not charging them? I currently have 2 on my plate where I'm like, we're still working towards that, and there's a violation for the vehicle. They did something wrong, but is it chargeable to the degree of reckless driving, gross negligent, homicide by vehicle? So someone was speeding, but were they speeding recklessly? It's kind of like, that's kind of what we work towards. Any other questions?
What would be like a reason for someone to lie about who's driving?
Let's say someone was suspended, or one's drunk, the other's not drunk. You can think any reason, there's a reason out there, unfortunately. Any other questions? So this is what I was talking about, the event data recorder, where it's in the vehicle, usually the center console or underneath the steering wheel. It's these little boxes, and Upper Macungie has a box about this, like this. It's got about $300,000 worth of equipment in there because, of course, stuff's not cheap. So we can pretty much plug into any vehicle as long as it's equipped. But we have vehicles that aren't equipped with it. And sometimes we have vehicles that are older than 2010 there, like that Jeep, the one that was on Hamilton. That was I think a 2002, and it was not supported. So we had nothing on that vehicle. Yes?
Is that pretty much when they started that, 2010?
It's just like a ballpark figure. Even nowadays, some of them don't have it, but it's
Pretty much
most of them will have it now. Yes. Yes.
Those data recorders.
Yes. And which sometimes we can't get access to it because it's vehicle burned up. You know, when the vehicle burns up, we're not going to be able to get access to that. And then ultimately, when we finally put it together, then we consult with the district attorney, and we have a sit down and we determine whether or not it's criminal or if it's just an accident. Any questions, guys? Yes?
What was the longest time you spent on like one crash one?
Longest time? Probably that Dorney Park one, right in front of Dorney Park. I was probably there like 6 hours. But that's just on scene there. So, yes?
So when like someone calls 911 for an accident,
Mhm.
do all the police officers or first responders in the area just go, or are there like specific?
Essentially. So most of our guys now, they've been doing the job for a little bit. They know when, because our dispatch will put out, sometimes they'll put out just a standard accident, MVA, someone complained of head pain. Is everybody going to that? No. But sometimes they put out MVA, entrapments, vehicles on fire. Like when you hear stuff like that, then most likely everybody's going. Upper Mac just had one of those recently where guys from our department responded because it just sounded, and it wasn't a good one. Any other questions? Yeah.
So if there was like a hit and run case, how would you find the person?
See, that's a good one. So that hit and run right there that I ultimately charged, I knew what type of vehicle it was because there's still some debris there. So we put out a press release looking for a Toyota Highlander, so-and-so years. Ultimately, she did turn herself in the next day. But if she didn't, that would have been interesting. Because I was thinking about I was going to have to go to the collision centers to say, hey, if anyone comes in with this, contact us. But hit and runs are difficult. They really are. Any other questions? Yeah.
So when you actually put out your final report there, what's the length of that, roughly speaking, that you actually turn into DA?
I should have brought one of those. So imagine you guys have like a binder like this. That's probably like the size of it with all the documents and everything that I get.
For just one accident?
For just one accident where I'm charging or I'm not charging. That's why these cases can take 3, 6 months, a year to complete. And I try to tell that to the people that are involved with these that survive, but they're the suspects, to try to live your life as you normally would, but I'll be contacting you kind of thing. It puts me in an awkward situation. So, because I'm human too. I would feel terrible if I hurt somebody, but then having that in your back of your head that you may be arrested. So, But usually if it does go down to that, it's not like we come knocking on your door, hey, come with us. Stuff's pre-planned, it's planned out. There's usually attorneys involved, defense attorneys, where it's kind of worked out to make the initial process started and then go to the courts.
And then maybe one more time, how did you get singled out to go into this for South Whitehall? Aptitude in it, or you were just...
I was always interested in accidents, and my sergeant at the time was a reconstructionist. So they came to me, asked me one day if I wanted to do it. I was like, yeah, sure. So they sent me, and then it's something that I just stayed with.
Was that a school offered by the state police?
No, there are so state police will only do that for themselves. The booklet passed around, Institutes of Police Technology and Management. That's who I went to for it. They're based out of Florida. I didn't get to go to Florida. I went to Massachusetts. Yeah, they had good food there though. Yes.
What happens if you get a call right now? Are you gonna leave?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah. Why wouldn't I? Yes. So that's great part about the Lehigh County Reconstructions team. Whereas the Upper Mac accidents, Whitehall accidents, Upper Saucon, like we all go to those scenes. So we get that training, that experience, because there's times a year I won't go to any, but then like the past 3 months I had 2. So it's kind of like they come in spurts, seems like. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing.
So you're South Whitehall, and you get called in, you help out in Whitehall Township.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're technically,
Is your work still valid for the judge in Whitehall?
yes, we're technically county detectives. We got sworn in and everything. It's kind of like when SWAT, so when SWAT members, kind of like the MERT team, Municipal Emergency Response Team, when they go to a scene, they're usually members of all the departments, but they're sworn in as county detectives so they can operate in, let's say, Upper Saucon or wherever they need to operate.
And if the state police do it, they don't include you then?
No, state police is their own entity. They have, I think it's just only one female officer right now. I think it's a Corporal Glad. She's been doing it for, I think, 10 years. She's beyond. She could come in here and probably teach you the physics class. It's for the amount of accidents she covers, because I think she covers a few barrackses. So imagine the barrackses, because there's Bethlehem, there's Fogelsville, and then she even goes down south towards Philly. Yes?
What is like a normal day like for you?
Normal day. So I start at 6:30, and I go till 6:30. Essentially, we have 12-hour shifts when you're on patrol. If it's not a crazy day, for me as the supervisor, I am responding to some of the calls with my officers that one, domestic or something where someone could be arrested, or like there's frauds at banks or something like that. I assist in that matter, and then I am approving reports and all that, like paperwork aspect. But then there's days when we only have 3 officers on the road. That's our bare minimum. So let's say today I actually have 5, but let's say I only have 3. So imagine the amount of calls that South Whitehall can get. You're just running around. It's not like that at this point. Once Dorney Park starts up, it turns into that. It's nice with Dorney Park now, because I'm sure everybody's been to Dorney Park. We now have officers assigned there. So, but if no one is assigned there, the road handles most of that. Any other questions?
For places like Dorney Park, I know there's like a lot of people that come from
Mhm.
out of PA.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how is it different? Like, if it's
Like-
a different state that gets in an accident.
Okay, so if someone from Dorney Park is involved in an accident,
Like, yeah, like if it's someone from like Jersey or like New York, like how is it? Is it the same way? Or?
to a certain degree. For accidents, I would say yes. We would just get all the information, good address, all like that. If they're being arrested for something else, like DUI or drugs or something like that, they'll most likely be taken to the courts right away, like taken down to the booking center, photographed, fingerprinted, and they'll see a judge. And then their court date would be set. And then bail would be determined, depending on what they're charged with. Us at South Whitehall, we like Dorney Park, but then we don't like Dorney Park because it's the amount of influx in population. Because I think we have about 20,000 in the township residents. When Dorney Park's busy pre-COVID, it'll get up to 25, 30,000 just the Dorney Park. Any other questions? Yeah. LTRC, that was 2 years. I'm currently I'm working towards my bachelor's into sales. Starting a family kind of put off school for a little bit, and then I was doing the job, but kind of realized I need to go back to school for a little bit. And no, I was not in AP honors physics but I had a good grasp on math, but it's once you do it 8 hours a day and then kind of you get it. But what you guys had to do over there, like I said, I don't think I could do that in the amount of time you guys had to do it.
So they were seeing it from a different perspective while it was fresh there.
Mhm.
But needless to say, you didn't necessarily have to take AP physics or honors chemistry and that, but he's still using math and science on a daily basis. He saw the velocity calculations and even the science stuff. I learned something. I mean, I would never have thought of using the light bulb filament as a test whether or not the lights were on. But,
Yeah.
I mean,
It's a little tricks of the trade. think I saw that at our last accident where it was a motorcycle, and sure enough, yep, it was bent and everything. That was the first time I actually saw it in person on an accident scene.
Your general thoughts on motorcycles, just on like the safety and there's sometimes arguments of, well, I'll be thrown off of it, so that might be better.
So I used to have one. I thought it was really cool. Then I sold it. Actually, I had a few. But yeah, they're, you just gotta watch out for other people on the road. Does anybody have motorcycles or dirt bikes or anything like that? Good.
You hear the thought once that drivers often aren't necessarily, when you look at an intersection, you're more expecting to see a car. And you almost kind of saw that right there where you're looking for a car and there might be a motorcycle there, but just because your brain's kind of set to think that a car's coming.
And I think that's what happened with that Hamilton and Lincoln, because all that traffic was everything. Someone was waiting to turn left. She was going to be turning left, and that motorcycle just slipped through. And yeah, it was a shame.
Honestly, didn't mean to do that, but just, if anything you take from this, hopefully, you realize how careful you do have to be as new drivers out there. There's another question.
So I saw that the police officer witnessed her turning left.
Mm-hmm.
Even if there was no accident, would the police officer still follow her and like give her a fine for?
Yes, most likely, if the officer is doing their job. I will say that. Because that intersection, we, like I said, we get those all the time there. And sometimes it's end your shift, you're trying to go home, and you just left Dorney Park after clearing an arrest, and then someone turns left in front of you. I'm not saying I haven't done it, but it happens, where people don't go after violations that occur right in front of them. So.
All right, well, we're going to let Sergeant Wishner get back to his day here, and we really appreciate him taking time to come in and do that. I found over the years that the South Whitehall Township Police Force in general has always been very accommodating to do these educational things with the public and that, and they follow suit today. So it's awesome that he was able to come in here today. And I thank everyone for paying close attention and asking good questions here too. I took some notes down myself there on. I learned a lot from this. I've been doing that project for a few years right now, and I definitely picked up on some things today, and it was interesting to hear it from a real world perspective. We made that from a teacher perspective, and we kind of made it the ideal set for you to investigate.
Exactly.
Right? And in the real world, that's not usually what happens. You have to turn to things like video evidence if you have some. Even if it's just a narrow window between two trees in a driveway, and you're using that to do a speed distance over time calculation, that still upholds in a court of law, though. And just that thought that there's probably a black box with flight data recorders like they have in planes inside your cars. It's something that I just never really thought about. I thought it was only maybe in just a few models, but I guess ordinary Toyotas and all that have that now. So I learned a ton from that today. So we're going to take a little break right now because I know we have some, we're going to go back to our unit on gravity and orbit, and we're just getting started here. And then we're going to give a little moment for him to get his material out of the way, and thank you for showing us that. And just the technology involved in that is pretty awesome that we could put that into a 3D model and have that set up digitally now by just going around and mapping that out. So, but without more delay, so we'll thank him again for.
Thank you, guys.